In Desert and Wilderness, Henryk Sienkiewicz, Chapter 7. The camels thundered like a storm across the moon-bright sands. Night had fallen. The moon, once a broad red disk, had paled and climbed high. The distant desert hills took on a gauzy silver veil that did not hide their shapes, but made them seem like luminous apparitions. From time to time, a jackal's thin wail rose from among the scattered rocks. Another hour passed. Staś threw an arm about Nel and steadied her, trying to soften the jarring throes of the wild ride. The little girl kept asking more often why they raced so, why there were no tents, no fathers to be seen. At last Staś decided to tell her the truth, a truth that would have to come out sooner or later. "Nel," he said, "take off your glove and drop it lightly on the sand." "Why, Staś?" she asked. He held her close and answered with an odd tenderness. "Do what I tell you." Nel clung to him with one hand and feared to let go, but she managed by slowly taking off the glove with her teeth, finger by finger, and finally slipping it off and letting it fall to the ground. "After a while, drop the other," Staś said. "I've dropped mine already, but yours are lighter and will be easier to see." Seeing the puzzled look in her eyes, he went on. "Don't be frightened, Nel. But you see, it may be that we shall not meet your father or mine at all, and that these ugly men have taken us. Don't be afraid. If that is true, a pursuit will follow us. They will catch up and take us back. That's why I had you drop the gloves, so trackers would find our trail. For now there's nothing else we can do," he continued. "Later I will think of something. I promise I will. Only don't be afraid. Trust me." When Nel learned that she might not see her father, and that they were being carried off far across the desert, she trembled and wept, clinging to Staś and sobbing as she asked why they had been taken, and where they were being taken. He comforted her as best he could, almost with the same words his father used to comfort Mr. Rawlinson, that the fathers would chase them and notify every post along the Nile. Finally, he assured her that whatever happened he would never leave her, and would always protect her. But her longing for her father outweighed her fear, and she wept long and bitterly. So they rode, both of them sorrowful, through the bright night over the pale desert sands. Staś's heart was squeezed not only with sorrow and fear, but with shame. He was not guilty of what had happened, yet he recalled the vanity his father so often reproved. He had thought himself invincible, ready to dare the whole world. Now he felt like a small boy whom anyone could do with as he pleased, and that he was driven against his will because a half-wild Sudanese slapped the camel's flanks behind him. He felt horribly humiliated and saw no way to resist. He had to admit to himself that he was afraid of those men, the desert, and what might befall him and Nel. Still he swore to her and to himself that he would watch over and defend her even at the cost of his life. Nel, exhausted from crying and the mad ride that had lasted 6 hours, at last began to doze and sometimes to sleep deeply. Knowing that a fall from a galloping camel could kill, Staś tied her to himself with a rope he found on the saddle. After some time he felt the pace slacken, though they still crossed smooth, soft sands. On the horizon the hills loomed faint, and mirages, the desert's nightly delusions, began to appear on the plain. The moon grew paler. Before them low, strange pink clouds slid, almost transparent, woven of light only, drifting as if pushed by a faint breeze. Staś watched the burnouses of the Bedouins and the camels take on a rose tint as they passed into these lit spaces, and the whole caravan became bathed in a delicate pink glow. Sometimes the clouds turned bluish, so it continued until they reached the hillocks. Near the hills the camels slowed further. Rocks jutted from sandy mounds or lay scattered in wild disorder among scree. The ground became stony. They passed hollows sown with stones, dried riverbeds. At times the route was blocked by ravines they had to bypass. The animals began to pick careful, dancing steps among parched clumps of Jericho roses that thickly covered the slopes. Once in a while, a camel stumbled and it was clear they needed a rest. The Bedouins halted in a hollow, slid from their saddles and began untying packs. Idris and Gebhr followed suit. They tended the camels, loosened girths, took off food stores and searched for flat stones to set an evening fire. There were no dry tree boughs nor the usual kindling Arabs use. That Chamis, Chadiji's son, gathered Jericho roses and heaped them into a pile that burned readily with a smouldering glow. While the Sudanese fussed with the animals, Staś, Nel and the old nurse Dinah found themselves together, aside from the others. But Dinah was even more frightened than the children, and could not speak. She wrapped Nel in a warm blanket, sat at her side and with a groan kissed her hands. Staś immediately asked Chamis what all this meant, but the boy only showed his white teeth in a grin and went on picking Jericho roses. When Staś questioned Idris, he only said, "You shall see," and wagged a warning finger. The Jericho rose fire burned more by glow than by flame. All gathered around it except Gebhr, who stayed with the camels, and they began to eat corn cakes and dried mutton and goat. The children ate, despite Nel's eyes growing heavy. Then, in the dim firelight, dark-skinned Gebhr appeared and, shining-eyed, held up 2 small bright gloves. "Whose are these?" he asked. "Mine," Nel answered in a sleepy, tired voice. "Yours, little viper," hissed the Sudanese between his teeth. "You mark the way so your father will know where to follow us." And with that he struck her with a courbas, a terrible Arab whip able to cut even camel hide. Nel, though wrapped in a thick blanket, cried out in pain and fear. Gebhr did not get to strike a second time because Staś leaped like a wildcat, struck him with his head in the chest and seized his throat. It happened so suddenly that Gebhr fell back and Staś fell on him. The two rolled on the ground. For his age the boy was unusually strong, but Gebhr quickly handled him. First he tore Staś's hands from his throat, then turned him face down, and pressing his neck with a fist, began to lash his back with the courbas. Nel's cries and tears, as she clutched the wild man's hands and begged him to spare. Staś might have done no good had not Idris suddenly come to the boy's aid. Older and far stronger than Gebhr, Idris had been obeyed since their flight from Gebhr. He now snatched the courbas from his brother, flung it away and cried, "Begone, fool! I'll teach that scorpion a lesson." Gebhr ground out through his teeth. Idris seized him by the cloak, and looking him in the eye, spoke in a low, threatening voice. "Noble Fatma has forbidden any harm to be done these children, because they interceded for her." "I'll beat him," repeated Gebhr. "You will not lift the courbas on any of them," Idris answered. "If you strike, for each blow I will give you 10. He shook him like a palm branch and continued, "These children are Smain's property. If any of them does not arrive alive, the Mahdi himself will order you hanged. Do you understand, fool?" The name of the Mahdi struck terror in all his followers. Gebhr lowered his head and began calling out with fear. "Allahu Akbar! Allahu Akbar!" The cry silenced him. Staś rose, breathless and bruised, but knowing his father would be proud. He had leapt without thought to save Nel. Though the courbas' lashes burned him like fire, he thought not of his own pain, but soothed the girl, and asked if the blows had harmed her. "What I got, he said. "But he'll not lay a hand on you again. If only I had a weapon." Nel clung to his neck with both arms, tears wetting his cheek, and kept assuring him that she did not hurt much, and that her tears were for sorrow over him, not pain. Staś leaned close and whispered in her ear, Nel Not because he beat me, but because he hit you. I swear I will not forgive him. That ended the struggle. After a while, Gebhr and Idris made peace and stretched their cloaks on the ground and lay down, and Chamis soon followed. The Bedouins fed the camels with doura, mounted 2 spare animals, and rode toward the Nile. Nell rested her head on old Dinah's lap and fell asleep. The fire guttered, and the rustle of doura in the camel's teeth alone could be heard. Small clouds sometimes veiled the moon, but the night was clear. Jackals kept up a thin lament behind the rocks. 2 hours later, the Bedouins returned with camels bearing leather waterskins full. They banked the fire and sat down to eat. Their arrival roused Staś, who had dozed, and the 2 Sudanese and Chamis. Then a conversation began around the fire. "Shall we go?" asked Idris. "No," replied a voice. "We and our camels must rest. Did anyone see you?" "No. We reached the river between 2 villages. Only dogs barked from afar. We must always fetch water at midnight and draw where no one is. Once we pass the first cataract, the village is thin, and the Prophet's friends grow stronger. The pursuit will come after us for sure." Chamis lay back, hands supporting his face, and said, "The engineers will wait for the children at El Fachan all night, and until the next train. Then they will go to Fayum, and from there to Garak. Only then will they learn what happened and must return to Medinet to send those copper wire messages to the towns along the Nile, and the mounted men who will chase us. That will take at least 3 days. Until then we need not tire our camels. We'll quietly smoke our pipes." He drew from the fire a burning sprig of Jericho rose and filled his pipe, and Idris smacked his lips in approval. "Well planned, son of Chadiji," he said. "But we must use the time to ride as far south as we can for these 3 days and nights. I'll breathe easier only when we cross the desert between the Nile and Karj." "May God grant the camels strength. They will hold," agreed one of the Bedouins. Chamis added, "People say Mahdi's troops already near Aswan." Staś, who had followed every word and noted Idris's earlier words to Gebhr, rose and declared, "Mahdi's armies are by Khartoum." "No, no," said Chamis. "Don't heed him," Staś replied, "for he has skin and not much brain. Even if you changed camels every 3 days and drove like this, you would reach Khartoum in a month. And by then an army, not Egyptian but English, may block your way." His words made an impression. Staś added, "Before you get between the Nile and the great oasis, the desert roads will be guarded by many military posts. Words running over copper wire travel faster than camels. How will you slip past?" "The desert is wide," answered a Bedouin. "You must stick to the Nile," said another. "We can cross, and when they search from one side we will be on the other," said Gebhr. "The copper wire messages will reach both towns and villages. Mahdi will send an angel to lay a finger on the eyes of the English and the Turks," another cried, "and shield us with his wings." "Idris," Staś said, "I do not speak to Chamis, whose head is like an empty gourd, nor to Gebhr, who is a mean jackal, but to you. I know you mean to take us to the Mahdi and hand us over to Smain. If you do it for money, know that this little girl's father is richer than all the Sudanese together." "So what?" Idris interrupted. "So what? Return willingly and the great Mahendis will not spare you money. And so will my father," Staś answered. "Or you will hand us over to the government who will hang you." "No, Idris. You will hang only if you are caught fleeing. You will be caught. If you come back voluntarily, no punishment. You will be rich for life. Whites of Europe keep their word. I promise you this for both Mahendis." Staś was sure his father and Mr. Rollerson would rather keep any promise than expose them, especially Nell, to the horrible journey and life among Mahdi's savage hordes. With a pounding heart he awaited Idris's reply. Idris was silent a long while, and finally asked, You say the father of the little bint and yours will give us much money. Yes. And will all their money open the gates of paradise that one blessing of the Mahdi can open? Bismillah, cried both Bedouins with Camels and Gebhr. Stas lost hope. He knew that although Eastern men are greedy, when a true Muslim sees things in the light of faith, no treasures can tempt him. Idris, encouraged by the cry, spoke not to answer Stas but to win praise. We are fortunate to belong to the tribe that produced the Holy Prophet. But noble Fatma and her children are his kin, and great Mahdi loves them. If we give him the little bint and you, he will exchange you for Fatma and her sons and bless us. Know that even the water he washes in each morning by the Quran's rules heals disease and smooths sin. What then of his blessing? Bismillah, echoed the Sudanese and Bedouins. Stas clutched at a last plank of hope. Take me in their place, and let the Bedouins return with the little bint. For me they will give Fatma and her sons. They'll ask for her more surely for you both, was the answer. Stas turned to Camels. Your father will answer for your deeds. My father is already in the desert, on the way to the Prophet, Camels said. Then they will catch and hang him. Idris tried to hearten his companions. Those vultures that will pick our bones may not yet be hatched. We know the danger, but we are not children. We know the desert well. These men, he nodded to the Bedouins, have been in Berber many times and know paths where only gazelles run. None will find us there or follow. We must turn for water to Bahr el-Jusef and then the Nile, but at night. Do you think there are no hidden friends of the Mahdi along the river? The farther south, the more of them. All tribes and their sheiks wait for the time to take up swords in defense of true faith. They will supply water, food, camels, and confuse the pursuit. Bismillah, they cried a third time. It was evident Idris's authority rose among them. Stas understood all was lost. To spare Nel, the Sudanese wrath said. After 6 hours the little miss came barely alive. How can you think she will bear such a road? If she dies, I shall die too. And what will you present to the Mahdi then? Idris, seeing no reply, answered with a gentler note. I saw how you clutched Gebr's throat. By Allah, you're a lion's cub and you shall not die. As for her, he looked at Nel's sleeping head on old Dinah's knees and added strangely softly, we'll make her a nest on a camel's hump like a little bird's, so she feels no fatigue and can sleep as calmly on the road as she does now. With the Bedouin's help, he set up on the best dromedary a deep, steady seat for the girl, using ropes, blankets, and bamboo poles so she could sit or lie without falling. Over it they stretched a canvas hood large enough, even for Dinah to sit beside her. See, Idris told Stas, a quail's egg would not crack in these felts. The old woman will ride with the child to serve her day and night. You will ride with me so you can be near and watch. Stas was glad to have at least that. Pondering their chances, he decided they would likely be captured before the first cataract. And that thought steadied him. Sleep came upon him soon. He planned to tie himself to the saddle and, freed from holding Nel, sleep a few hours. Night paled. Jackals ceased their whining. The caravan was about to set out. At dawn, the Sudanese stepped aside to a distant rock and, according to the Quran, made their morning ablutions, using sand in place of water to save the precious liquid. Then their voices intoned the salb, the first prayer of the day. In the deep silence their words rang clear. In the name of the merciful, the compassionate God. Praise to the Lord of the worlds, merciful and compassionate on the day of judgment. You we worship, and you we ask for help. Guide us on the path of those whom you have blessed, and not the path of those who have earned your wrath. Amen. Stas listened and lifted his eyes. In that far country among the tawny, muffled sands, he began softly to say, Under thy protection we take refuge, Holy Mother of God. And the prayer trembled from his lips into the dawn. End of chapter 7.